Have you ever picked up a book that just felt different? Like a book that seemed to know you better than you even know yourself? Well, today we're going to explore a totally different way to read the Bible. We're not talking about a rule book or an instruction manual, but a real conversation. And our guide for this is the unique perspective of Eugene Peterson. So think about it for a second. When you crack open a book, what are you usually after? Most of the time, right, we're reading to get something from it. Some facts, a good story, maybe just an escape from reality. We are totally in the driver's seat. But what if there was a book that just completely flips that whole dynamic on its head? And boom, here it is. This is the absolute core of the idea. Peterson says that when we open the Bible, we're not just reading, we are stepping into a conversation where God has the first and the last word. It's not some text that we're meant to master. It's a book that invites us in, a world of revelation where, and this is the crazy part, we discover it's a book that reads us, even as we're reading it. Now, when you step into a conversation like this, the first thing you're probably going to notice is that it is not what you expect. Peterson argues that if we really want to hear what's being said, we kind of have to let go of all our neat and tidy ideas about what a holy book is supposed to look and feel like. Because, as you're about to see, it's messy. Really messy. I mean, look at this. On the one hand, we often come to it expecting this polished, almost sanitized world, Perfect heroes, easy answers, a story that makes us feel good about ourselves. But Peterson points out that is not at all what we get. Instead of cleaning up reality, the Bible plunges us headfirst into the raw, complicated mess of our own humanity. It doesn't ignore suffering or injustice. It meets us right there in the thick of it. But here's the crucial twist. Peterson says this messiness, it isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's actually the main stage where God does his most profound work. It's right in the middle of all this imperfection that we get to see God doing something truly amazing. Okay, so take the book of Judges. It is filled with what Peterson calls nearly unrelieved mayhem. I mean, the leaders are just deeply, deeply flawed, but the story isn't really about their failures. It's about how God somehow uses these incredibly unlikely, imperfect people to push his story of salvation forward. And this theme, it just keeps going. You look at the kings of Israel. Their story is basically a centuries-long highlight reel of failure, just one after another. And yet, even in the middle of this unbelievable mess, Peterson reminds us, God is still at work, still patiently working out his purposes. Their failure doesn't stop him for a second. And this brings it home with someone I think we can all relate to, right? Jonah. He is not presented as some larger-than-life hero we're supposed to admire. No way. He's clumsy. He literally tries to run away from God. He gets mad when things don't go his way. He is, as Peterson puts it so perfectly, a companion in our own ineptness. He's one of us. So this huge idea that God works with messy people in their messy everyday lives, it has this massive implication for us. It means there's no neat little line between what's sacred and what's secular. God isn't just in some special box that we open up for an hour on Sunday. And this is exactly where the biblical idea of wisdom comes into play. Peterson defines it not as some secret spiritual knowledge or having all the answers, but as a deeply practical skill. It's the art of living faithfully, of living skillfully right here, right now, in the real conditions of our ordinary lives. So where does this big conversation with God actually happen? Well, according to Peterson, it's not off in a monastery somewhere. It's right here. It's in how we deal with our money, how we are at our jobs, how we lead, how we treat our friends. It's Nehemiah literally rebuilding a city wall with stones and mortar. It's our sleeping, eating, and walking around life that becomes the main event. Okay, so when you start to put all this together, seeing God in the mess, finding him in the everyday, it completely transforms the whole purpose of reading. The goal is no longer just to collect information. It's about participation. It's about getting in on the action. And that means our whole focus shifts. We stop asking only, what does this mean, as if it's some kind of abstract puzzle to solve? The question that becomes way more important is, how can I live this? Reading becomes this incredibly personal act of listening and then responding, of finding our own part to play inside God's epic story. So, what is the end of that story? Where is it all headed? Well, it's not just fire and judgment. As Peterson so beautifully says, the end of the story is love. It's the absolutely stunning reality of a God who chooses not to stay distant, but to move right into the neighborhood, to make his home with us, right where we are. Which brings us right back to where we started. We are invited into this conversation. We find ourselves listening to God's story, and then we're given the space and the freedom to answer back. So the final question really is for you. If this book, this story, is an ongoing conversation, what's your next line? What are you going to say?